Captive audience, it is Wonderful Wednesday with your co-host Don Anderson and myself, Sunny Danforth.
I
Howdy
love
doody,
wonderful.
Don.
I love wonderful Wednesdays with sunny. And speaking of sunny, it is indeed sunny over here on the west side. I think it's almost 80 degrees. So how about that?
It is. It's beautiful, and we are set by this coming weekend. It's going to be 80 over here. It's
Wow.
uh, it's a beautiful day outside. It truly,
Mhm.
truly is.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're gonna have we get these bursts of warm, and then it kind of reverts because it just snowed like 8 inches 2 days ago up in the mountains.
That's,
I was
that's
I
that time
was
of year.
watching
Mhm. We have
just
no
30
gradual.
minutes from here.
Yeah, there's no gradual change in weather. It's cold, 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 and it's hot.
Yes, yeah. The switch is right now. The switch is flickering up or down, up or down.
Yep, yep. That's how it works. We love it.
Yeah.
We love the Northwest.
Well, hey, I just posted a story. Oh boy, here
You
I
can
go.
post
All
music.
right. A story from PJ Media that Biden is looking at trying to do a National Guard power grab. And so Lincoln Brown wrote about this story, and this has to do with our National Guard. So the proposal, Biden's administration is proposing to transfer members of the Air National Guard to the Space Force without the permission of state or territorial governors. I think this is really big news.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and it goes to show you just how power thirsty these people are. I mean, talk about it overt, you know, overtly unconstitutional, unlawful thing to do. And it sounds like most states are not going to buy into it, right?
Right, right. They're not actually. And Governor Greg Abbott out of Texas penned a letter to him and on May 3rd, and he said this proposal would give the Secretary of the Air Force unilateral authority to transfer Air National Guard units to the Space Force
Mhm.
without first obtaining gubernatorial consent. And 48 other students, so this are not students, but governors have been um, of states and 5 territories also
Mhm.
expressed their opposition. And that was back in April. So this is something that the Biden administration has been working on, and
Mhm.
Blaze had reported on it as well.
Mhm.
And it's always whenever the president, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know more about this than I do,
Mhm.
but when the president needs more troops and wants to activate the National Guard, he requests permission because
Right.
it is a state's National Guard.
And there's a reason for this. I mean, there's a reason that the founders put together a federalist system to prevent the government from just running roughshod over everybody. And that's one of the reasons why we have 50 different states to prevent that. They have to ask permission, which puts the power back into the people to be able to keep that from happening. So, yeah. The great thing about this is it does give us all an opportunity to get re educated around the founding principles.
Well, I'll tell you, we're getting a lot of those opportunities, Don.
Yes, we are. They're given to us
It's
all the time.
all the time, all the time. I've
Now,
got a little pocket constitution. This one happens to be from the Heritage Foundation. I'll give
mhm,
a plug to them.
yeah,
And I refer to this
mhm,
often because
mhm,
there's things I haven't it has the Declaration of Independence and the
mhm,
Constitution, and I've not memorized it all. I don't know it all. And then with the amendments that go with it.
mhm, yeah. And there's, hey, look, unless you are studying it and into it, there's no way you could retain all of that. But
No,
you can, but general principle, you look at things, you can almost guess, okay, that's a power grab. Anytime the federal government is trying to take something from the states, you can pretty much rest assured that it's probably going to be unconstitutional. The great thing about the Constitution is it's really a short document when you think about it, and the whole objective is to
yeah,
protect the people from the government. And this is one of the reasons why I coach my kids. Anytime there's a bill, does it raise taxes or does it increase laws? If it does, don't vote for it. Now, that's like not 100% the case, but it's pretty close to 100% the way to do things. There's a very high hurdle before you give more power to the government. There's got to be a really good reason for that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, we have to be vigilant in what the Biden administration is proposing, and this is something that I just went, wow, I had no idea. And
Hmm.
states need to retain all of their rights.
Hmm.
The president has our entire military,
Hmm.
every branch of our military at his disposal. So for me, this makes no sense to go also after National Guard.
Right. No,
It,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
it's a National Guard domestic,
Yep.
right? Federal.
They say that, but how many have gone overseas?
Oh, sure. I know. You start
You
blurring
know,
those lines, and it's a dangerous precedent. Um,
it is. It is.
but this is one
Hey,
of
I
the reasons
want
why.
to
Go ahead.
I want to quickly address what Lori has said. Do you see the comment there?
I did. I was going to raise that. And yes, I am open to that. And we can discuss when and how and where that happens. But yeah, more than happy to, Lori.
Okay, there you are. And I think it would be really good.
She's scaring me now. Now I feel pressure.
Yeah.
But it
So
sounds like,
I ran across this other story. Okay, several things here. This was also from PJ Media. And when I saw it, I went, well, is this happening in America? And the story is spreading an entire new city dedicated to teaching and spreading radical Islam is being built. What could go wrong? And I thought, well, where's this? Is this in the United States? Well, actually, this is in Egypt.
Mhm.
And this is in Egypt. It's a new city, and it's being built in New Cairo, Egypt.
Mhm.
And it's going to be known as Islamic Mission City, or simply New Islamic City. But it made me think about things that are going on in our nation with all the protests at the universities and that. Is that is happening here in our country? There's cities that have what's called no-go zones,
Mhm.
and that's where the police are afraid to go because they are definitely outnumbered, and these I understand are Islamic areas.
Well, I think it was the German philosopher Hegel who said history teaches us that man learns nothing from history, right? And the thing that's amazing about this is we're talking communism and the destruction that results from it. It hasn't been a generation yet since the Berlin Wall fell. And we have failed collectively to teach our children about that. I mean, things that our generation knew instinctively, they don't have a clue about.
Yeah.
So we've now got a whole generation being taught by professors at universities at the high school level. It's academia that's doing this to us. And the media, is, a little bit as well, especially academia. So these kids have no knowledge of Albania, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Soviet Union, East Germany, um, North Korea, China. You go down the list. Almost 200 million people got like destroyed by these things,
Yeah.
less than a lifetime ago. 200 million, and it's still going on. I mean, you look at North Korea now, and the incredible thing about it is, this experiment. If you're going to run a scientific experiment, we've done it across every culture, every continent, every race, and every place has been disaster. We even have two places where I think you had a side by side comparison: East Germany versus West Germany. They started at the exact same baseline, and what'd you get?
Yeah.
You had to build walls with dogs and electric wires to keep people from one place going to the other. Look at North and South Korea. The experiment is still running, and it's a slave camp. We don't need to run this trial again. But if these young people have not been taught that from the cradle, you know, then they're going to fall for it, because on the surface it sounds like a good idea. I remember in high school thinking, yeah, that everybody gets the same thing. On the surface, yeah, why not? Until you get
Right.
into the devils and the details. Like, how do you make that happen? Well, the only way you make that happen is with a gun. you know, people aren't going to naturally gravitate towards that.
No, they aren't. Free will, I think, is an innate nature.
Mhm.
of doing our own thing. Now, some people have more drive than others.
Mhm.
You know, not everybody wants to be a chief, and other people are real happy being Indians, and that's why our system, our form, actually works really well. We
Mhm.
don't have a caste system here in America. You can rise up and do whatever and make whatever of your life that you would like, and but under radical Islam or other radical uh, ideologies, you can't.
And see, and here's the thing, and this is just, I'm going to noodle this a little bit. The problem, one of the big problems, is we've drifted away from at the founding religiosity, because the vast majority of people, 1700s, 1800s, first half of the 1900s, were religious. And so the goal in life, this is the pursuit of happiness. It's in the constant, in the Declaration of Independence. If you look at the language of the time, what they really meant was pursuit of virtue. That's what that meant in that context. Whereas you look at now, when people talk about like success, what are they talking about? They're talking about money. They're not talking about virtue. So who's the most successful person? The person with the most money or the person with the most virtue? Well, pull up a People magazine in the grocery store checkout line, and you'll have the answer to your question, right? So we need to get back to pursuit of virtue. And what gets you to pursuit of virtue is back to faith, family, and religiosity. And without that, this system cannot stand. As I think it was John Adams said, this system can't work without religious people, because the religious people will follow the rule of law, because it's the right thing to do. If you have
Right.
too many people who are a-religious, if you will, then they're not going to follow any rules of the law. They're going to make it up as they go along. And what do we see on the left? It's precisely what we see. There are zero principles because there's no virtue. There's
You're
my
absolutely right, Don. Well said. Well said.
got my soapbox.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
Amen, brother. Right?
the
I
Lord just
agree
said,
with Lori.
and I like Lori's comment. We meaning the conservatives collectively, we just let them slide. I remember when I
Oh
was a
yeah.
kid, and the whole debate become. I remember when I was at the University of Oregon, there was a cross on a hill, and people were crying and protesting because they were crossing the hill. It was on private land, and they screamed and moaned and cried about that. And I'm like only 18, 19-year-old, thinking, what's the big deal? Why are they sweating that? I mean, right? But conservatives roll over.
That's the same thing I thought. Down where I was in the Coachella Valley,
Uh,
there was the same thing about a cross on a hill
mhm,
that was on private property, and so it's about the same time
mhm.
frame. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, what's the big deal with that?
Yeah, why are they sweating that? We didn't realize that was a
Yes,
really serious thing,
but
but
now we
us
know.
now we know, but at the time, our elders should have known, and there were those saying it. I mean, there were people saying it, but they weren't listened to. What's her name? Phyllis Schlafly. I love that.
Yes,
If you guys don't know Phyllis Schlafly, you should know Phyllis Schlafly. At the time, I thought she was just an old, like, beehive hair woman who didn't know she was overly conservative. She didn't know what she's talking about. She'd talk about the slippery slope, right? Man, I wish she died a few years ago. I owe her an apology. When I die, hit the pearly gates, I'm going to ask for Phyllis Schlafly. Because she was spot on. And there were people like her who were saying that,
yeah.
and then they took prayer out of the schools and all this other stuff. And that stuff, you give them a little bit, you give them the cross, they come back for the prayer.
There
You give
wasn't enough freedom fighters or enough fighters fighting for our constitutional rights,
them,
because it's been in our lifetimes. We've said this before. The tail has wagged the dog. It's
mhm,
been this very small minority group of people that
mhm,
has changed things for
mhm.
the majority,
Yeah,
and
no,
it's
yeah.
because it has been whoever is loudest. Or you go, oh, I don't really want to take on that argument. Well, we've got to take on the argument. Have the conversation.
Yeah, as it turns out, it's the small stuff. You
It
got to handle
is.
the small stuff before. It's like, remember Giuliani back in the '80s when New York City was a nightmare, and he got elected. And I can't remember the name of his police chief. And one of the first things they did went after the graffiti. Well, that sounds like a small thing, right? But if you let that small stuff go, then you're going to let the large stuff go too. Because criminals are like, well, they don't care about a little paint on the wall. Maybe they won't care about me breaking in this, in this store, and so on it goes. Um,
Yes, and they had what I think it was like broken window syndrome. So you're
yes.
having to repair all of that, and it
Mhm,
is all those small things. They all do add up, and they add to moral decay
mhm.
or moral rise or rising of communities by taking care of those things.
Oh yeah, because I'll tell you another one too. It's like graffiti. People underestimate how important it is to get rid of graffiti, because graffiti to me is almost worse than theft. Now, if a kid goes and snatches somebody's purse, that's probably not a great example, but let's say the person doesn't hurt. That's a crime. But you can say to yourself, I can understand that crime. They're trying to like get something. It's not good, but I can understand. But graffiti is anti-civilizational, right?
Yeah.
That we need to put the kibosh to, because it brings down everything, and for no reason other than is anti-civilizational. And
Hmm.
this is one of the reasons why I think Singapore does so well, for example, because if you put graffiti on something, you get caned. A lot of people here thought that was like an over-the-top punishment. I think it's a great punishment.
I do
But
too. You know, when we have consequences for actions, it deters those actions.
no, they don't have any graffiti. I love that these liberals will go over there and talk about how wonderful Malaysia is, but they'll never talk to why it's that way. It's because they don't
Right, right.
advocate the policies you liberals want. you know,
Yeah.
if you steal something there, you might be missing a finger. You put graffiti in the wall, you're going to get canned. Too much drugs, execution, like within 10 days, right? So they don't have those issues.
Yep.
Imagine that.
No, no, they don't. And that's a good thing, quite frankly. That's a good thing. So, some good news for Trump today, if y'all didn't hear. This is something that is amazing. I'm not going to call this good news, but yet it is. Yesterday, Judge Cannon, in the documents case against Jack Smith, with Jack Smith, um, the judge had ordered an indefinite pause
Mhm.
on this trial. Well, there's evidence that has come out. And so I just posted PJ Media. Matt Margolis has written about bombshell evidence proves that the FBI staged the infamous Mar-a-Lago raid photo.
Did
So,
anybody doubt that?
and also, we both read Jeff Childers' Coffee and COVID, and I highly recommend that if you don't follow his Substack, and he delves into that a bit, that there is Trump's attorneys are saying this evidence isn't even in the original boxes
Mhm.
from what it was taken. So it's a tampering of evidence. And then to go that all of this photo that I'm looking at right now, you guys can't see it, I'm sorry, but this photo of these documents and secret, you know, uh, top secret cover sheet and whatnot, it was all fake. It wasn't anything of Trump's documents. They took fake cover sheets and put them, and now they don't even know the order. The files were all orderly, and from what I've read today, the files are not, things don't match up any longer. It's not in order, not in the same boxes. This is evidence tampering, and there are so many cases or so many issues with this case that Judge Cannon had to pause this so these other trials and evidentiary hearings that they're going to be having can happen. So
And you
I
have a
think
good
it's a
point.
big deal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this lawfare, we know what the purpose is, right? But the thing is, polling data shows that it's not hurting him; it's actually helping him. I mean, you have the people with whom that works are people that were never going to vote for a conservative anyway. I mean, that
Yes.
that 30% of the population, I don't, if you hit them in the hand with two but four, they're still going to vote for this stuff. But that central group of people, the what you might call the undecideds, independents, maybe, this is not helping because they can see obviously what this is. I got to hear a quick story. That's what I meant to mention. I wrote it down as I say about this. So I have to go. I visit my mom once in a while, and my mom, like, she's elderly, and what a lot of elderly do is that she does crossword puzzles and she does other interesting things. But one of the things she does is she watches the national news and the local news, and it's just like I try to visit when that's not on because it makes me mad.
I can understand that.
Yeah. So, but it is good in one way though, because it gives me insight into what the average Joe, or at least the person on the left, is hearing all day long. It was stunning. It was a 100% Democrat commercial. I mean, the entire commercial was pretty much about abortion, how Trump's going to take away your right to abortion. I mean, it's like I'm telling you, the whole half hour was nothing but that, and then the sex trials going on with Trump. That was the entire thing. There was not even a mention of Biden, good or bad, by the way,
Right,
right?
right.
And I'm
No, I
watching, like, wow, how could you rationally watch that and believe any of it?
there, but unfortunately, there are those that do.
Well, yeah, the crazies, I get that, but someone who's that you're looking to persuade is
Right,
someone who's thinking. And if you're
right,
thinking, you're looking at this thinking like it can't be. You've given me nothing on the other side. I
right,
just
right. But I think
anyway.
a lot of people don't realize that, oh, I'm not hearing the other side. I
Yeah.
don't think they're looking at that. They're looking at, there are those, and I've got some in my own family
Hmm.
that they are the MSNBCs, CNNs,
Hmm.
and that news. And it's definitely different from any of the news things that I watch.
It is
It is
pure
definitely different.
100% emotionalism and lies. It's just stunning. I have been away from the national news probably. I quit watching it in about 2016. And all of it, by the way, because I mean Fox included, because it was just name calling, and I was like, well, it's just boring to me now.
Right.
But now this is the only exposure I get to it, and it's sunk even lower than it was in 2016. It's pretty remarkable.
It is. And there's a lot of alternatives now that you're actually getting what's going on, which
Okay.
what we're trying to do. But
Mhm.
I wanted to be to this because this documents thing, they're making it to be, we know what it is, and they're making it to be what, this is the FBI tampering with evidence. This is people losing confidence, have lost confidence in our alphabet agencies.
Mhm.
And now the truth is out. I mean, the truth is coming out. And I want to tell you, so far, Donald Trump has been correct about everything.
Mhm. Well,
He's that
I
I
don't
can
know.
see.
I don't know if many of you are out there are familiar with the whole. This goes back to the 50s, but Alger Hiss Chambers, that whole thing with the State Department being in, what's the guy's name, McCarthy, and his accusation about the State Department being infiltrated. Turned out the guy was right, you know, and
Yes.
it's just metastasized over the last 70 years.
Yes, it has. Well, something that is very good, we've got all these protests going on and whatnot. Well, the over a dozen federal judges have said they will no longer hire law clerks from Columbia. And I think that is fabulous.
Hmm. Yeah, that's outstanding. I know there are a number of Fortune 500 companies that are starting to say the same thing. And and, hey, look, it may not be for the most moral reason in some of these cases, but can you imagine? Are those people actually going to spend their time at work working? Just to be blunt.
Right, right. So 13 judges signed a letter to Columbia University President
Hmm.
Manoush Shafiq, stating that they would no longer hire law clerks from Columbia College or Columbia Law School.
Hmm.
And the judges cited the explosion of student disruptions and the
Hmm.
virulent spread of anti-Semitism at Columbia as reasons for their actions. And rules aren't rules without consequences, Judge
Hmm.
Ho said, and students who practice intolerance don't belong in the legal profession.
Sure, you can protest legally, but when it comes to disrupting other people's rights, I mean, this is just kind of basic and fundamental.
Yeah.
I saw in a related story, I think it was published in, what is this, the Free Press. Students are refusing to go to elite schools because of this very thing, and they said they prefer to go to state schools because of this overt, anti-Semitism.
Mhm.
More power to them.
And Ho, he was addressing the Kentucky Federalist Society, said all too often the law schools appear to be run by the mob, with whether out of sympathy or spinelessness. Colleges aren't teaching students how to agree to disagree, he said. They're teaching students how to destroy.
Well, let's face it, somewhere around 95%. of college professors are leftists, Democrats at best, and law school is no different. So it's not a surprise. I think they're in
Mhm.
cahoots with the whole thing.
And apparently there's a Yale boycott. Let's see the letters. Let me read this real quick. This is no, that's a different thing. So, I think that's a good thing. It's actions have consequences. You're getting radicalized. I saw in our chat feed there that yes, the Boy Scouts have turned the page on Boy Scouts. They've been neutered, you might say, and truthfully, it's sad. I think it's really sad that they are now changing their name to Scouting America. I think there was a time that the Boy Scout was doing great things for young boys
Mhm.
and mentorship, especially in single family homes, and that it's provided opportunities to
Mhm.
young boys to for development and being around other boys.
And see, this is the strategic part of communism, right? And a lot of us don't like to think in terms of strategy, but this is part of the strategy: the destruction of the family and the
Yeah,
destruction of religiosity. You think about those, public institutions. When I say public institutions, I don't mean institutions funded by the public, but public-facing things like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that up through the 60s and 70s were huge. I remember there used to be TV commercials. I can even remember the songs they would sing, right? Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, because they foster a relationship between boys and their dads, and Girl Scouts, the moms and their daughters, and that's all about strengthening the family. And most of the time, they had a blatant uh, nationalism associated with them, as well as a religious component. And so, this is exactly the opposite of what communists want. So, it's no surprise that they attacked those things. I mean, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts been gone for a long time. The
yes.
destruction of Boy Scouts has been more recent.
Yes, it has, and it's a shame. They had to file for bankruptcy. They've been sued because it's limiting, and they've just been struggling since in 2013 they had initiated a policy change allowing the inclusion of gay youth,
Mhm,
and all of that is just the destruction, as you say. It's the playbook.
mhm.
It is the playbook of the left.
But here's the good
After
news.
114 years.
Yeah. But there's a lot of organizations that have sprung up in their place, though, that are taking on those. So that's happening too. So that's the good news.
Well, that is good news, where boys can be boys and not forced to be some other gender thing, at all. And it's I think I think that's important, and fostering the relationships of family unit, 100%. So, Catholic Vote Story had a corporate watchdog. Big tech execs donate almost exclusively to Democrats. Now, that doesn't surprise me. It's sad to say, but, it doesn't surprise me, because what we as consumers need to do is pay attention to and not patronize
Mhm.
those that are giving to the left. Why should we?
Sure.
We need to go to the businesses that are helping support our ideals,
Yeah.
whatever your ideals are.
And it's the
And
easiest strike. It's the easiest strike in the world. You don't have to hold a picket sign. You don't have to worry about going outside and getting eggs thrown on you. More power to those people who do that. But you can simply just not go to Target. you know,
right, right,
and whatever grocery store you're in, you can decide it's just not buy Budweiser. I mean, these are pretty easy things to do. Disneyland, go to some other amusement park, right? Uh,
yeah.
I'll go to enjoy the great outdoors or something, right? But you just start gradually voting with your dollars. Don't watch such and such a show on TV if they're disgusting. Um,
So according to recent analysis from the 1792 exchange, executives from Fortune 10 companies
mhm,
give 77% of their political donations to Democrats and 23% to Republicans. But This exchange, the 1792 exchange, observed that the three Fortune companies in particular, almost all of their executives' political donations went to Democrats. And those three are Alphabet Inc., the parent company of Google, Apple, and Amazon. So Blaze Media looked at those corporations, and the ratio given to Democrats over Republicans apparently exceeds 9-1.
Yeah, and these are information technology companies on top of that.
Yes, yes, they are,
Pretty dangerous.
and their value, their market capitalization value for Alphabet and Apple, it's over $2 trillion. You know, something that is their valuations. These big three, and Amazon is just behind at 1.96 trillion. All three of these big tech companies' valuation is larger than the GDPs,
Mhm,
gross domestic products,
mhm.
of developed countries like Australia, South Korea, and Spain.
See, this is why I say the media is pulling another like slick trick. You know, everybody's talking about what an enemy Russia is or what an enemy China is. And those are minor players. The real enemy are these guys. It's our own internal enemies, traitors, if you will, who are
Mhm.
out to destroy us. It's these people.
We're
Oh,
we're paying for our own destruction.
that's exactly right. Um, and I think
Sad
the
to say. And until we learn about it and who the players are and wake up to the fact and shut it off.
Mhm,
So, two outliers among the Fortune 10 in
mhm,
this regard are Chevron and Walmart,
mhm,
where 81% and 69%, respectively,
mhm,
of political donations from executives and board members, not the companies, okay?
mhm,
The executive and board members went to Republicans.
mhm. Kind of interesting. I mean, in that, Sam Walton is what I would expect, right? But
Right.
Chevron, hey, there's no way they can be in cahoots with these people. They're for the destruction of energy companies.
Yes. Yes,
They're
absolutely.
they're a
So,
natural enemy.
it's good to spend our money where it will help us, where it will help us. And actually, there's a Chevron station right not up the street, and that is where when I read the story today, I go, well, that is actually where I get my gas,
Mhm,
because Oregon has made it where you can pump it yourself.
mhm,
Well, I like the gas station that pumps it. They're keeping employees,
mhm,
and the price is the same
mhm.
whether they pump it or I pump it.
Yeah.
And I get some points there, so I get a little reduction periodically, and I'm
Mhm.
helping to keep a few people employed. And
Absolutely.
that's what we need.
Right on. Yeah. And people need those
Yeah.
entry level jobs. How else do you learn how to work?
In fact, I didn't pull this up, but I did see a headline today that some businesses are doing away with the self-service checkout. They've given up. They're going, we're quitting the self-service checkout. I don't remember what the stories were, but I went, hooray. And like at my grocery store, they have the self-serve checkout. I never go there. Well, I can't say I never go there. I rarely go there.
Well, as
Rarely,
Jesus,
rarely. And since I made a concerted decision to
Mhm,
not do that, I
mhm.
haven't been to the self-serve portion for a long time.
I never do it too. My wife does it. I refuse. Right. I'm not the human being. I don't care if I wait. But there's another reason why they're doing it is because the thievery that they're experiencing. Because if you think about it, that's pretty much a honor code thing, right? And people are stealing them blind at those self. So they have all kinds of technology on those self-service things to make sure people
Yeah.
actually like pay for what they put in the bag. But apparently, it's just too much. And so I've known a number of stores are kind of rolling that back. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, it's hopefully that thing has run its course. Hopefully that'll, because in fact, I'll tell you, I had when a McDonald's,
Hmm.
back when I used to eat at McDonald's,
Hmm.
and we were traveling and said, hey, let's stop at McDonald's. When you travel, you tend to eat, at least I do, a little more fast food than I normally do. And so we pulled in there, walked in because we
Hmm.
wanted to get out of the car for a little while, walked in, and it was all self order things. We walked in and saw that and walked out.
Hmm.
Said, no, I'm not doing that. Because we don't have to. We can make the decision. They can't force us to do their system.
Well, you better not go to San Francisco then, because I think you have to, when you go to like a store there, you have to wait outside and they go get the stuff for you. You can't even go in the store. Even toothpaste is locked up.
Oh my, well, I'll tell you, I've heard about that kind of thing. And I have not seen it. I've seen smatterings of it, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty bad. We get to make that decision though.
Well,
To not live in those places.
yeah, well,
And
and
B,
you raise a great point, because I think what you're going to start seeing, we already see this, but no one wants to talk to us. Talk to this, and this is this: the more virtuous place you live, the less of this security stuff you see. Right? If people don't talk about that, like, right, but you drive through parts of LA, you got bars and the windows, all that kind of stuff. Well,
yeah,
lack of virtuosity, right? You go to certain
right,
stores and there's people standing outside waiting, look at your receipt and all that stuff. When you go, well, that's because you have less virtue. You go to some areas and there's none of that. You know, it's still 1955 because people are virtuous, and it's usually rural
exactly.
areas.
Yeah, yeah, where the handshake is still a contract.
Right, right, yeah, and your
Yeah,
word means something.
your word means something. Absolutely. So, interesting story out of also Catholic Vote. And thank you for turning me on to this news source. I'm liking it. The federal court, a federal court, has ruled in Charlotte, North Carolina, has ruled a Catholic school can fire a teacher in a same-sex marriage. So this is a court. So they clearly, this is went at a federal appeals court yet today, said that a Catholic high school in Charlotte, North Carolina had the right to fire a teacher in 2014 after he entered into a same sex marriage. And so this is Lonnie Billard, a longtime teacher of English and drama, sued for sex discrimination under Title VII after the school fired him for his plans to marry his partner, same sex partner. And,
And
you brought up as we were talking about this, there's contracts that you sign, right?
sure, yeah, you sign a contract, and this is true for Protestant Christian schools as well. So this applies everywhere. And the crack up about this to me, Sonny, is this: these same people love to scream at the top of their voice about separation of church and state, and then when it comes to something like this, suddenly they don't want separation of church and state.
Right, right,
you
right.
you made a decision to work in an institution, sign the documents, you knew what the deal was, and now you want to break the contract. There's lots of places you can go work that promote that, like the public schools, and you get paid more, by the way.
Right, you do. And so the court ruled, quoting, we conclude that because Billard played a vital role as a messenger of CCHS's faith, he falls under the ministerial exception
Mm-hmm.
to Title VII.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, this is about their faith. You know where you're hired, right? You know where you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people just want to push the envelope. And
Well,
so it's gotten turned over on appeal. And who knows, that might end up at the Supreme Court. It might not be all done, but I thought this was an interesting case
yeah.
just to talk about a little bit.
Things like this have been tried over and over again. I mean, let's put it this way: with the court as presently structured, there's no way that's going to fly. And so that's a good news, which is another reason why having the president at the right time is such an important thing. And we
Yeah.
had that, and we've been able to get Supreme Court justices who, not conservative Supreme Court justices, but constitutionalists. Just
Yes.
interpret the Constitution. That's all we ask you to do, right?
That's right. You know what? Just read the black lines.
Right.
Don't
That's
try
it.
to read the white lines in between and interpret. Just
Don't
read
mix it
it
up.
and look
Right.
at for what it is.
Right. Yeah. But if they want to pass a constitutional amendment to do that, then go through the process and do an amendment. Right. But
Yeah.
you can't have like 9 or 11 judges making stuff up, because then you have no law at all. But yeah, that's an absolutely fascinating case, because that's their job. That's what they want to do. They want to destroy these institutions. Because look, you can go get a job somewhere else, just like the person with the cake. Remember the
Oh yeah, the bakery.
The bakery. It was the same sort of thing. How many places will make you a cake? This is right across the street. But the whole objective is to force their views down somebody else's throat, which is precisely what they consistently accuse Christians of.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a couple of other good news stories, I'm going to say. And this one is an astronaut from Oregon, Don Pettit, is set for mission to the International Space Station. How cool is that?
The first
You
thing I
know,
thought was, can you take the governor with him?
drop her off, leave her there right after. I don't know.
He'd really be a hero then. Leave her in orbit.
And so it's been 12 years since he has been to space. But this
Wow.
September, he's set to launch on a Russian Soyuz rocket to the International Space Station. And he's born and raised in Silverton, and this will be his fourth time going into space. I think this is cool. And, I don't know how old he is, but I'm going to say, not a spring chicken anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really great. Maybe how cool to go to space. I would love to do that. I would
Well, the whole
really
thing
like.
is, when we were kids, and what I guess most people in this audience are kind of in a similar boat to us, those were things that fired the imagination. I remember being in like fourth, fifth, sixth grade, and it'd be on the radio, and we sit around the radio and listen to the launch, and and have discussions about going to space, and it was like exciting. And kids don't get any of that anymore. I think it's really sad. I mean, what's amazing anymore to kids?
Yes. So I'm liking what Lori says. One way.
Man,
You faded out there, Don. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, we watched man walk on the moon. We watched man go into orbit for the first time. We watched the space shuttles, take off, and all the excitement around all of that. And and Jacques Cousteau, right? We
Oh
got,
yeah.
what did they get anymore? I mean, there's no, and that goes back to that. I know I'm rambling a bit, but that goes into that lack of gratitude too. There's no gratitude for the amazing things that they have. We're standing on literally on the shoulders of giants. The
Oh
last
yeah.
25 centuries, if it took 25 centuries to get to this point where you could like turn on the water faucet and water comes out, you can flip a switch and light comes on. None of this was true recently, but nobody is communicating that to this generation. They're mad because you get on the airplane, the internet service is out. Are you serious? You're going across the country at 500 miles an hour. Lewis and Clark took 3 years to do that. You're
Right.
going to do like 8 hours, and you're mad because you can't watch a video game. But we're not pointing that stuff out. And the reason you have it is because you live in a constitutional republic with Judeo-Christianity, as foundational principles, and free market economics. That's why you have it. But nobody's saying that. And
You're right.
oh, my wonderful wife's bringing me coffee. I love
All right. All right.
her.
Thank you for bringing him coffee. So, something else is now Lori says one way. I think that's one way for the governor. Yeah. Not for Don Pettit. That's for the governor one way.
Yeah, exactly.
Drop off. Yeah.
No, Lori, I'm not that hard. I just wanted to go into orbit and just stay there.
But, I'll tell you one of the things. So here, Marjorie says, they took their grandson to Kennedy Space Center online. I don't know. I have watched several of Elon Musk's SpaceX launches online on X, formerly Twitter. And I think it is so cool, especially seeing the main rocket also come back and land on that landing pad. It's not getting jettisoned. This is something that's getting reused, recycled. And I think that's pretty cool. But you're right. It's the times are changing. The technology has advanced in many ways. And in some ways, it's helping us. In other ways, it's a hindrance.
Yeah, well, it's like anything else. It's like atomic energy is a two-edged sword. It could wipe us all out, or it could make us life a whole lot easier too if used the right way. It's like
Yes,
everything's that way. A gun, hey, a gun is great, or a gun could be bad. Depends on who's using it, right?
that's a
So,
fact.
yeah,
But
which
it
goes.
doesn't do, it never does it all by itself, a gun.
Nope, it doesn't do it by itself. What do you call it? Which goes back to virtue again, right? It's got a virtuous use in the right hands, but if the person's not virtuous, it's going to be an evil thing, right? So everything comes back to that. Like I was talking about the triangles that make this country so great. At the base is Judeo-Christianity and virtue, right? Free markets don't matter, and constitutional republic won't matter if you won't follow the rules. You won't follow the rules if you're not virtuous.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem of all of these illegals coming into our country because they're coming from countries that just have no rule of law. They don't have what we have. And they've also cleared out their prisons and their jails and their mental institutions, which is why it is so important for us to be vigilant, pay attention, to our surroundings and where we are and what we're doing, because there are people that frankly don't care about our country
Mhm. Yeah,
um, here.
and this is why
Sad but
it's
true.
funny. One of the things the left loves to do is attack. You hear them attack the word nationalism, and they like to use malignant, and they have all these terms now to attack that. If you carry the flag, you're somehow like an evil person, and don't say this the Star Single Banner and all that other stuff, right? But you have to have a love of country, or you won't fight for it. And that's precisely what they want you to do. They want you to think your country's terrible, so you'll lay down and let them just roll right over you. So we have to fight that. This is why, uh, remember a pledge allegiance to the flag when you're in grade school? This is why we did all that stuff. This is why you had the Star Spangled Banner before, or sporting events and those kinds of things. We have to bring that stuff back and keep it, because if hey, you're not gonna fight for something you don't love.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we have a story here that is Monique Despain, who is running for the 4th district candidate. She has been announced today, or yesterday, I should say, a law enforcement endorsement. And, this is Despain said in the conference that public safety is priority number one. And quite frankly, that's the only job of the government is
Mhm.
public safety. That and
Number
roads,
one,
highways.
yeah, protect us from foreign enemies and protect us from the enemy within, the domestic
Yes,
ones.
that's right. Foreign and domestic. And we have more domestic, absolutely. So I'm really glad that she got that. And if anybody is there in her district, please vote for her. Right now,
Yeah.
we are in election time. We've all got our ballots. I covered that a bit on Friday. Some of my own ballot in our area, and a little bit on the state. We've got to get Will Lathrop for Attorney General,
Mhm.
Monique Despain, Cliff Bentz, I'm sure is going to be an easy win back in the nomination. We're in the nominating time
Mhm.
for the conservatives and the Republican Party in this election. For those that we want on the ballot for November. Don't forget that. This
Yeah.
is the nomination time
Mhm.
for the parties. I happen to be Republican. I support conservative values, and that's how I vote, and
Mhm.
that's what this is. And just remember, there's on November is going to be rank choice voting that's going to be on the ballot, and we don't want anything to do with it.
I mean, I'm not even sure how that could be. Maybe there'll be if that ever passed, I would have to think it'd be immediately constitutionally challenged because it's just too confusing. Um,
If the people voted in, then I would say that that's their choice. But we have to fight it. We have to help educate people so they
mhm.
will not vote it in.
Oh yeah, we can't rely on the legal beagles to bail us out. I mean, I get that, but I'm just saying if it did pass, it just seemed.
Well, there's other places that it is. Some
I,
communities, like Portland, is using ranked choice voting now.
well, Portland's something. I'm not sure community is the
Washington,
word.
don't you got doesn't Washington have ranked choice voting? I think
Um,
so.
I don't know. Maybe certain counties. I don't think so.
Maybe, I don't
It'd
know,
be
but it's
statewide.
a huge push
Yeah.
across the nation. Alaska has it, and because of
Yeah, I
that,
know
it
Alaska.
is not
Yeah.
the number one person, you
Mhm,
know? It's out of the 4, I don't know
mhm,
how I put my hand up here. Out of the
mhm.
4, it could be the very bottom one
Sure.
that didn't got the least votes ends up winning the whole thing,
Yeah.
and that would be
The
the
more
least desirable candidate.
it's what the left does best, obfuscate
Yes.
and confuse. That's how they roll.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
So, anyway,
And
hey,
no wonder
everybody.
Australia, yes, she said Australia has ranked choice voting. Shock of shocks.
So thanks for joining us, everybody. And I'm glad Pat voted for Monique. Hooray. This is very good. Yes, don't mail your ballot. Turn it in the drop boxes at the courthouse where your elections office is. Do not mail those ballots.
Yeah, because they may not get there. Remember
No,
who
no,
runs the post office? Let's not be
that's
stupid.
exactly right. That's exactly right. Good night, everybody.